our host for this panel is the great Joe Moore, founder and CEO of Psychedelics Today. Joe, tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into it.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. My name is Joe Moore, co-founded Psychedelics Today 10 years ago, I think this week, which is really great. I've been deeply studying psychedelics since 2001, as soon as I found out about the potential clinical applications and not to mention the extraordinary aspects of them beyond the clinical. And we run a robust training program called Vital. Been training both clinicians, so prescribers, doctors, therapists, psychologists, and the underground, all in the same program. We find there being a lot of value having those people together. This absolutely should not be dominated by physicians. This is folk medicine and really appropriately also in clinics. So it's a really complicated thing. Politics doesn't do complicated, super great.
There's not really.
Wah wah.
It's gonna be.
How about we pass the microphone because we're so close here on the couches?
That sounds good to me.
Do you trust it?
I think it'll be okay.
I think it'll be okay. I think it's gonna be okay. All right.
If it sucks, I'll pull it.
If it sucks, we'll call it. Okay. So
we also have this one too. An 800 episode podcast. We've been around for a really long time. 7 million downloads. TV show, books, the works. We hire writers. I write myself. We've been at this for a long time. Board member of the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition.
Yeah.
We've had this policy summit yesterday. The press club's really robust.
Yeah,
and
we'll
then,
get back to that.
Also co-founded the Psychedelics and Pain Association, where we're looking at psychedelics for chronic pain indications.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've done other stuff too, but.
Yeah, and just to give folks a perspective on how important psychedelics today's longevity is. In case you're not aware, journalism is dying. And to be around in this business as an independent operator for a decade, especially in a niche issue like psychedelics that is only just now entering the broader American zeitgeist, is a testament to the will of Joe in building an organization and a brand that can last. But I think also an indicator of the growing demand that continues to be, especially as we'll dig into as far as the political landscape goes. So, Eric Jansen, the Balanced Veterans Network, tell us a little bit about your drug advocacy origin story, drug policy advocacy origin story, and then what separates BVN from some of the other well-known veteran advocacy groups in the psychedelic and plant medicine space.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jack. My name is Eric. I'm born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's where I'm coming from. My experience into this space was I had a difficult transition after the Marine Corps. I was 5 years, went to Afghanistan.
Just bring it at like an angle.
Like this? Okay.
Yeah.
I was in Afghanistan twice, 2010 and 2011. I came back and through the VA system, diagnosed with TBI, PTSD, clinical depression, severe anxiety, all of it. And in 2017, my best friend and roommate unfortunately lost his battle with mental health. And I unfortunately walked in on the aftermath of that. And that's how my Easter started in 2017. And from that moment on, my quality of life dropped tremendously. The VA tried everything and it just was not working for me. The talk therapy, group therapy, SSRIs, anti-anxiety, antidepressants, I was on it all. And I was about to follow my best friend down in the grave had I not moved away from Wisconsin, moved in with a friend, got involved with an amazing veteran community that provided me resources and knowledge to ultimately take a jump, leaving the country and experiencing ayahuasca in the jungle for a week. And I've also had experience with psilocybin that has incredibly helped me. And I'm actually about to be leaving, going to Mexico in 2 months for Ibogaine treatment. But this is amazing, but I shouldn't need a passport to experience healing.
Yeah.
And the system has failed me, and there are options.
Yeah, so notably, you're in town this week, just as we talked with Susie earlier, because Balance Veterans Network was part of the Cannabis Unity Coalition. Can you talk a little bit about what BVN is and where your organization's space in the veteran drug policy reform ecosystem really sits as of now?
So, Balanced Veterans Network was founded almost a decade ago, and we're an organization that is built on balance. There are so many ways that veterans are finding balance these days: yoga, meditation, breath work, spirituality. But we love talking about cannabis, psychedelics, because there's, like I said, there's so many ways out there, and we provide a platform that is available on the Play Store and the App Store that gives veterans a safe space to talk about these modalities, that they won't be criticized from colleagues, family, creating those awkward conversations that they're just not ready to have with the general public. So providing that safe space, especially in integration after psychedelic journeys, is so key to our healing journey as veterans, and I'd love to discuss more about it.
Joe.
Just commenting on, does anybody know this term, externalizing costs? Yeah, you get to do this thing and make somebody else pay for it. Like, I'm going to sell you all these plastic bottles, but the town has to pay for it. Like, getting rid of the plastic. So, like, this idea of externalizing costs to veterans, how extraordinarily unfair. And not to mention, you know, suicide and or having to leave the country for care.
Yeah.
You know, how fucked up. So,
Yeah.
I don't have what's next. You lead.
Yeah. So,
One thing I want to note that stands out about BVN is that so many of the veteran advocacy organizations that have garnered national and international headlines are often focused on special forces. The SEALs, the Rangers, the Marines. BVN extends across all aspects of the veteran experience. And we're going to talk a little bit about evolving policy. You know, so many of us here might be aware that at least so far, psychedelic reform has centered around specifically mental health, treatment-resistant depression, PTSD. Veteran angle has been a huge part of that. But Joe's work with the Psychedelics and Pain Association, in particular, an organization, Cluster Busters, that focuses on migraine headaches, cluster headaches, which are migraine headaches on steroids.
AKA suicide headaches.
Yeah, suicide headaches. We'll let Joe talk about that, but the point is, policy is being crafted around a lot more treatable conditions and access points than just what we define as mental illness. And the term, Eric and I talk about this a lot, but the term that we'll let you talk a little bit more about here in the future is mortal injury. That extends so far beyond what you would consider to be, PTSD or some sort of, just all of that to say, trauma does not discriminate. And as policy continues to adapt and evolve here in the Western world, I think the most important thread to keep an eye on, and the most important thread for advocates like Eric to keep pushing the envelope on, is diversification of access points and reasons for accessing care. So, Joe, you've got some things to add, and then also give us an understanding of where the landscape is as far as what's going on in Oregon, Colorado, and New Mexico.
Starting with the other conditions. So yes, psychiatric conditions, depression, PTSD, all that's super important. We need to start taking care of ourselves and each other. We can do this. We can do this with the support of the feds and on our own. We can all grow mushrooms. It's quite affordable to do so, especially when done with each other.
The psychiatric stuff super important, but we really want to
Expand the scope of that.
There are a lot of applications around neurodegenerative conditions like
Parkinson's and other things, Alzheimer's, potential research around Ibogaine, which Trump asked for the other day on camera, which is fun. So there's a lot of potential hope there for this whole new category that's not being discussed much in these federal policy conversations. Just yesterday at the summit, we barely talked about neurodegenerative conditions. I only know of one biotech company working on that. So trying to bring that through the normal drug development pipeline, but people are already doing it in Ibogaine clinics in Mexico. So it's really, really interesting. The chronic pain applications are extraordinary. We've seen people have major relief from the pain coming from spinal cord injuries. So fully paralyzed people having extraordinarily impressive pain relief. In some cases, I'm friends with a gentleman who was paralyzed from the waist down and went to all the greatest rehab hospitals, ate psychedelic mushrooms at a music festival, and he was able to move his toes for the first time in many years. He can now walk. It's not pretty, but he's walking. He has a cane. But he's a buddy, and it's really impressive to see where, also, this is potentially really interesting. There was a paper, I think, coming out of Europe on psilocybin impacting diabetes numbers.
Yeah.
So if we're able to investigate that more, we have a case study that we're hoping to publish soon, so you can maybe read that in the science literature soon. That's going to be really interesting, a game changer if we can actually reduce diabetes and help people live and feel healthier.
Yeah.
So this is not purely a psychiatric game. This is much bigger than that. And this whole conversation around betterment of the well is really important. Why can't we explore this on our own? This is our birthright as humans on this earth, to be able to explore these things from a psycho-spiritual and or just let's go have fun on mushrooms sometimes too. So what's happening in Oregon and Colorado, these are legal states. Oregon went first. You can access mushrooms legally in Oregon. It's a little bit weird because you have to go get government-approved mushrooms at government-approved clinics with government-approved facilitators at government-approved locations. So it's a little awkward and it's wildly expensive because government's supposed to keep us safe, and they made it so safe it's really expensive. A lot of people are getting access. There's really good data coming from it. I hope we can reform those laws. Colorado did a similar program, but made DMT, psilocybin, ibogaine, and mescaline decriminalized nearly to the point of legalization. There was a major shift at the Colorado state level just yesterday or the day before. I don't fully understand it, but there's major movement happening on ibogaine soon.
Yeah.
But there's also a legal regulated program, very similar to what I just, government mushrooms, blah, 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 in Colorado as well. My business is training. We are able to run Psychedelics today through offering training to people. We almost went into business in Oregon and Colorado. The economics looked so bad that it felt actually unethical to implement into those states, because we would be selling people a dream that you're going to be a full-time legal psychedelic facilitator. It's like, well, I think if that's what you want, you might have to be a full-time illegal psychedelic facilitator. It's not the case that the business is there. Just the economics I was discussing earlier necessitate a lot of reform.
Yeah. Well, and it's Eric. Do you have anything you want to add?
You can ask your question. I'll hit on oral injury.
Yeah, so, and then I guess to piggyback off of Joe's summary of Oregon, Colorado, and New Mexico, Oregon and Colorado both enacted their reforms at the state level through a statewide ballot initiative. Or everything has to go to the ballot box and vote on the issue, 2020 and 2022. New Mexico, just last year, became the first state to enact what's called the New Mexico Medical Psilocybin Program through the state legislature. So with bipartisan consensus, a group of New Mexico grassroots advocates really pushed a bill that is slightly different, right? You can just go sign up and, attend a service center in Oregon without any qualifying condition. New Mexico specifically uses that term medical, right? So they're getting very creative with what they define as qualifying conditions, and a big part of why that matters is because to be able to include, substance abuse disorder, alcoholism, et cetera, as qualifying conditions normalizes those conditions being included as non-negotiables in other areas of policy reform. So when we talk about the Wild West, which Colorado particularly is, I attended a conference a couple of weeks ago at PsyCon Denver, where yes, they were selling, DMT pens on the floor, DMT vape cartridges on the floor of the Denver Convention Center, not even under the table, right over the table, right?
It's not legal to sell them, despite what I said earlier.
Yeah, it's not
Legal to sell them. The loophole much like you might find here in DC, is that there is, you can pay for services, trip sitting, or really it all often ends up being a consultation fee. But like there's pop-up farmers markets, right? So one, if you love this stuff, Colorado's the freest place in the world to partake and indulge. Being able to access psilocybin with a life-threatening condition, we'll get back to Right to Try Act in particular, but that lawsuit has led to an ongoing review of what it actually is, which is a petition to the DEA to reschedule psilocybin from Schedule 1, which under the federal government's policy means that there is no medical value in the substance, and thus it is like the most criminalized that it can be. And obviously at this point, with FDA approval pending, right, like there will be some sort of rescheduling once an FDA approved psilocybin compound is there. But that lawsuit could play a huge role in whether or not we end up with pharmaceutical only synthetic FDA approved psilocybin or some sort of natural protection for whole mushroom or natural derived psilocybin that's not just from the pharmaceutical pipeline. So, and then secondly, the methadone drug that Joe mentioned is being developed by a company called Jansen Therapeutics based here in the US, but they were recently acquired by Japanese pharmaceutical giant conglomerate Otsuka Pharmaceuticals for $1.3 billion. So yes, there are concerns from some companies that are competitors that these drugs will do away with. I'm very curious about the rehab industrial complex because you have to go back, and these drugs mean you don't have to go back 5 times, right? Hopefully not. So there will be political forces pushing against this. Evangelists, neo-prohibitionist types that just make their money fear-mongering about this stuff. And of course, certain in the alcohol lobby, I'm sure, as they've done with cannabis. But change is inevitable, and there is still some hope for equitable reform in the long term. I don't want people to lose hope when we say the pharmaceutical route is inevitable. It's impending. It's going to be here by the end of this year, if not middle of next year at the latest. But there is hope. So pivoting to you, Eric, speaking of hope, even beyond executive order, there's been a lot of federal policy progress already ongoing in Congress, of which PVN has been very vocal and supportive of. Tell us about the landscape as it exists right now.
I just want to touch on what you were talking about, moral injury,
Yes.
before. Moral injury is kind of a newer topic. And in the veteran community, it's, say you call in a fire mission and it did not go right. You hit a school. It's not like direct combat, direct special forces related, but that's like an injury that is very, very hard to qualify as like PTSD. It's just kind of being in a situation where you wanted to do more sometimes and you just felt helpless. So a lot of times veterans will feel that way, even like they weren't able to deploy. You do all these workups and you don't have a chance to prove yourself in combat. That's another form of moral injury that veterans face. And what you were talking about on the federal level, there are a lot of bills right now that are essentially trying to expand already established institutes. To go back to the executive order quick, the USONA Institute in Wisconsin, where I live, was one of those 3 that received the commissioner's voucher for their psilocybin breakthrough therapy, which was designated by the FDA. And on the federal level, I'll talk about the Innovative Therapy Centers of Excellence Act right away. So this is a bill that would essentially establish no less than 5 VA facilities as centers of excellence. And with that designation, they're able to access innovative therapies such as psilocybin, MDMA, ibogaine, 5-MeO-DMT, ketamine. And these bills are such a step in the right direction because they're not a descheduling, a rescheduling effort. It's opening up these institutes. We're using the FDA's terms now. We're not trying to fight them on everything. It's like, we'll play your definition game now. And Jack spoke on Right to Try. There's another bill that's it's called the Freedom to Heal Act, and right now there's no pathway for qualified patients that are eligible for Right to Try to access anything under the Controlled Substances Act. This bill would essentially eliminate that red tape, create a registration process so that anything that is an eligible investigative drug under the Controlled Substances Act would be eligible under a registration process. that bill, I just had a great discussion with Congressman Glenn Grothman today. He's gonna bring that bill up to Jim Jordan in Judiciary to get it to the floor for a vote. It's where the bill's been sitting since it got introduced, I believe, in February or March of last year.
December of last
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, the Freedom to Heal was December. The Innovative Therapies was earlier last year. And then just recently, Senator Sheehy, along with Ruben Gallego, Tammy Duckworth, and Senator Bozeman, introduced a novel therapeutics bill. And essentially, this creates the governing body, the oversight, training the physicians, the trip sitters as well, having just another level of a governing body over that. And the initial meeting, Jack Bird, didn't really go as well as a lot of us hoped it would, but these conversations we're having are going to keep going. We're going to keep fighting for veterans, expanded access. We're just asking for institutes to open their doors even more, and there are pathways for it. And like I said before, healing should need a passport, and I have required a passport to access these therapies, and I don't want to go underground. I don't want to risk getting something that could possibly make my symptoms a lot worse. So it's very hard to also trust an organization to go to another country and do this. It's not safe either. My first time I went to Puerto Vallarta, thank God it was in 2022 before anything happened, but having that added level of stress before an incredible journey is not something that's needed. And then, like I was saying, with after these journeys with integration, like that is something they're starting to talk about too, is like, how do we implement integration? It's, well, the system's already there in the VA to set up weekly meetings, group meetings, so it's doable. There's a path, and we just need to get everybody on the same page and just get these through committee, get them into effect, so that way, like I said, the next administration can just come in and kind of almost do whatever, but we need these bills in place. That way, the veteran numbers will start to go down instead of up.
You guys don't have representation in the Senate and Congress here, is that
We
right?
have
I saw your license plates.
not a senator.
So this stuff really, like those folks really need to hear about this a lot. Your city government officials here, if you live in city limits, DC, like they need to hear about this stuff a lot. We can't really let the pressure up. This is really a critical time when we're kind of insuring ourselves against the vested interests of the pharma world. So I truly believe this is a both and situation. We should be growing mushrooms and treating each other, and then also people, like my grandma's not gonna eat my mushrooms, bummer, but like like she'll trust a doctor. So it's, for me, this is a both and. If you get hurt in the line of duty in the Army and the Army's not going to take care of you, it should be the case that you get treated at Walter Reed or you get discharged and get treated after. It's just not okay to leave people hanging, and it's coming.
Just a couple of things to add, and then we'll keep it moving. One, the importance of some of these congressional bills as far as creating new federal bureaucratic infrastructure to fast track psychedelic access. It's a very curious thing given the absolute decimation, the irreversible decimation of federal science research structures that have existed for decades. The brain drain that the American scientific research machine is going to experience over the next decade and a half plus is something we can't fully quantify the full impact of right now. And I think that it is just, the average wait time, as a statistic throw out to you folks, for a first mental health care intake appointment at a VA hospital right now in this country is 6 months at least. They've slashed provider access and a number of other funding for essential services. The 2027 federal budget the Trump administration just introduced proposes a 54% budget cut to the National Science Foundation. This is after everything they already did with the Doge era. You can tell by my facial expressions how I feel about this, obviously, irregardless of my journalism brand or whatever. But still, again, at the same time, fair or foul, the American standard as far as leading and setting precedent for international drug policy reform by way of what we're experimenting with is incredibly important to acknowledge. And creating something like the Office of Novel Therapeutics within the VA could be the opportunity to set a new standard for which countries across the world then implement, right? Like the Controlled Substances Act ended up being the basis for what the UN's criminal code for drugs is. We have set we've written, created the blueprint, if you will, and so being able to create an office that then sets a blueprint for how, for example, the Czech Republic, which legalized medical psilocybin services, Germany as well, right? There are countries, Australia, right, has legal MDMA, and figuring out. We're not going to have time tonight to get into cost and insurance coverage, et cetera, but to be continued on that front as well. Because the way that some of these policies will influence equitable access, possibly for good, even though that's what a lot of people are bracing for the opposite to be, and that's what it's been in Oregon and Colorado so far, is that a lot of folks from lower income brackets have not been able to afford access. There are scholarship programs, but they're fleeting. And the cost runs upon thousands of dollars. Very quickly, one thing I forgot to mention about New Mexico, that they recently allocated $500,000 in state funding for what they're calling the Psilocybin Treatment Access Fund, which will provide free psilocybin medical services to low-income New Mexico residents. Again, something that will set a precedent in a number of other states as they craft reform of their own. So, yes, absolutely.
So New Mexico also has a gigantic, relatively speaking, indigenous population, and the program is being developed in a way that advantages First Nation groups, which I think is a real first. Colorado and Oregon did not do that, and I think that's a really important move. Absolutely.
Yeah, and just one quick add, which is that a number of states have already moved to make state Medicaid cover the cost of like doula services in like 37 different states, and a number of other indigenous medicinal practices are already covered by state Medicaids, in New Mexico. So again, crafting next gen policy by precedent in real time. Keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I just think overall we are making tremendous progress. It's awkward, it's weird, it's uncomfortable. Like, I have to deal with people in Washington, D.C. who are responsible for the DEA amongst many other atrocities, and I don't really know how to deal with that. But I show up, I put on the suit that makes my body hurt and sweat and my feet bleed, and I'm like, okay, cool, this is part of the mission. Let's do it. Like, this is what I have to do, and I'm here for it. And I hope all of you kind of are starting to feel how big of a deal this is, and want to get involved.
One way, I'll get a little personal here, sorry. One way that I've been able to get involved with my state is one of my friends decided to run for state senator in Wisconsin and asked me to help him do that. I absolutely accepted. We have a lot of plans that are going to mirror what other states have already successfully done. Particularly in Wisconsin, we're going to target alcoholism through ibogaine treatment. A lot of other states are obviously having success targeting opioid use disorder, OCD, other substance use disorder, but no state has really targeted alcoholism. We want to get ahead and amend our state's Right to Try Act to mirror freedom to heal. So it's really, if you do have a lot of power to have influence on these politicians on the state, and it's just these conversations are what need to happen, especially in our veteran community, to stay alive, because the VA has been grossly underreporting their suicide rate. We hear the rate of 17 a day, 22 a day, but Alabama and Duke did a joint study called Operation Deep Dive that they essentially concluded that 44 veterans a day are taking their lives in one way or another. Because the way that the VA is reporting these deaths, sometimes they're suicidal, but they're not classified as that. Like, I know a few personal friends, well, I knew, they drove their vehicles into a tree, and that was vehicular death. It was not ruled as a suicide when it was clearly a suicidal ideation. So they basically dug deep into everything and realized that essentially with the term self-inflicted mortality, that 44 veterans a day are taking their lives in one way or another.
So we want you all to get involved, figure out who you want to collaborate with, learn how to grow your own mushrooms, support your local dispensary, and take care of each other.
Yeah, you guys both kind of touched on it, but as our closing thought again, as we close the last panel, you already have, who else should we be hearing from?
Everybody here. What do you guys want? Let's talk about it.
Who else should we be hearing from?
I mean, everybody just having these conversations is what's going to really make the impact and change everything on the federal level. If we want something done, luckily us as citizens have that right. These movements that are going on, city level, state level, federal level, are going to make an impact. And it's events like these, thank you again, Jack, for putting this on. Just even discussing this is something that I never imagined I would do. Like, especially, I mean, I wanted nothing more than to do this on my birthday. Today is my birthday. Jack asked me to do this. And I was like, absolutely.
It's like,
So just continuing to, share these events in the future on your socials, letting people know that there's a space that these discussions are happening is going to be the way that we're going to really hit this at the end of the day.
And thanks for doing it in your birthday suit.
Only one you get to see me.
Alrighty, I think that about wraps it up, but thank you guys so much, and thank you everybody for sticking around. Yes, absolutely.
I just want to say thank you guys for coming. This was incredible turnout. I was telling the host and the panelists, typically when you get this many RSVPs, about 50% of that show up, and I think this was almost 100% attendance, so just crazy. This is the first event we as a venue have put on, so thank you so much for being a part of that. We really look at that space as the future of what can be, from social cannabis, from cannabis hospitality, and in broader plant conversations. So please, if you're from out of town, stop by when you're ever in town. If you're from DC or the DMV area, you guys are always welcome. So again, Robbie, the amazing staff was Ant, Clint, Corey. Come out here, guys, real quick, because this was the first event. I want them to get some love real quick. For sure. Yeah, tip your butt tenders for sure.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Appreciate you.
Alrighty. More to come soon. Thank you all.
Woo! And the bar is still open.